Hello and gobble gobble, true crimer gobbles. Happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, or if you don't live in the United States or don't celebrate it, happy Thursday. I thought I would brighten up your happy days I'm sure you're all having with some stories of murder. So these are going to be 8 murders that occurred on Thanksgiving. 8, get it? Like, because you ate a lot of food today. Fucking stupid. Ugh. I'll edit it out. With that being said, viewer discretion is advised. Story number 1, Ashley Scott. It was Thanksgiving Day in 2006. At 3:46 p.m., Jeff Scott calls 911 to report that his wife Ashley is unconscious on the floor of their living room and appears that she is bloodied. In the background of that 911 call, you can hear another man talking, and it would later be revealed that that was a doctor friend of Jeff's. That man could be clearly heard saying, "She's dead." So police arrive, and she is declared dead there at the scene. The coroner would determine that she was severely beaten, and not by fists, but likely by some kind of blunt force object. She had a severe skull fracture. She had brain swelling. She took a lot of hits. When questioned, Jeff Scott said, "Her and I got into an argument around 1 o'clock this morning, and I thought I saw a text of another guy on her phone, so that's where the argument happened, and so I hit her, just once. I hit her once, and she fell to the ground. And there she lay unconscious since 1 o'clock in the morning." Remind you, 3:46 p.m. is when he called 911. So roughly, 14 hours? She's supposedly just lying on the ground, unconscious, after being beaten. Apparently only hit once. The coroner would rule that a lie because she had many injuries to her body. It turns out that Jeff was an abusive husband, and he had been so for probably some time. There were actually witnesses who saw the abuse taking place, but again, it's like a broken record. We talk about this all the time. It's a very scary situation to be involved in because you don't know if you telling on them is going to cause the person to get more hurt or killed. Unfortunately, it ends up in a death this time. But please don't judge the people involved. It's not an easy situation to get out of or to tell on someone. As a matter of fact, when Ashley and Jeff had married, years prior, Ashley's family wasn't invited to the wedding, and Ashley had sent them a letter saying, like, "We need to cut off ties with all of you." Jeff basically controlled Ashley and said, "I don't want you to see or talk to your family at all ever again." And because this was a narcissist and an abusive person, she listened. So unfortunately her family didn't go to their wedding, and they really didn't get a chance to really see her before her untimely death. Jeff was arrested and charged with her murder. He was convicted and sentenced to only 25 years in prison without parole. Not 25 to life, 25 years flat. He is eligible to be released in 2030. This man gets to live a large portion of the rest of his life after beating his wife to death. That is not justice. Moving on to story number 2. This is the case of Priscilla Ford. This happened on Thanksgiving Day in 1980. Priscilla Ford got into her 1974 Lincoln Continental in Reno, Nevada, and she decided to drive down a sidewalk filled with people, something that's very similar that happened recently. She ran over 29 people. She would injure 23 of them, and 6 of them, unfortunately, would die. Priscilla was apprehended there. And she had apparently been through several mental health professionals, several mental health hospitals. She was diagnosed as being a paranoid schizophrenic. And she at one point had shot one of her husbands, which he survived. But these hospitals just kept letting her go and not giving her the help she actually needed, clearly. What were her motives for this particular event? It's not really known. She was declared competent to stand trial. And at her trial, she said that she was the second coming of Christ and that this event was destiny. Don't know if that was just her trying to act crazy for the jury or what. I don't know. But regardless, it didn't work. She was actually convicted of all of the charges and she was sentenced to death. But she would die in prison in 2005 of natural causes. Story number 3, Tina Stewart. This was in Thanksgiving Day 2017 in Newman Lake, which is in the state of Washington. Paramedics were called to Tina Stewart's home at 8:30 in the morning, that early Thanksgiving. And a 30-year-old woman, when paramedics arrived, she was pronounced dead at the scene because she had been severely beaten. And the beating came from her 29-year-old boyfriend, Nicholas Holden. He apparently was also known for domestic violence. This is a reoccurring theme, apparently. Again, you know the drill. It's not easy to get out of these things. Apparently that morning, they got into an argument. One thing led to another, and Nicholas decided to hit her until she was dead. He was convicted, and he only got 16 years in prison. 16 total, without parole. At any rate, story number 4, Malachi Barnes. 3-year-old Malachi Barnes was riding in a vehicle with his sister and his father. They were driving on the freeway, kind of in the evening of Thanksgiving 2018, when all of a sudden a car pulls up next to them and someone rolls on the window and someone begins to open fire on the car that Malachi and his sister and father are in. 3-year-old Malachi is shot in the head and he dies instantly. His sister is also shot, but she survives. Anthony was lucky to not be shot at all. The car that fired the shots, they were apprehended, the people driving the car. It turns out that this drive-by shooting was, in fact, intentional. The shooters did have a target. The target was someone named Ivory Carter, where the two people in the shooter's vehicle apparently had some beef with. But again, this is mistaken identity. They shot the wrong car, and it wasn't her car. The two men that were in the car that fired the shots were Kavion Giles and Matthew Smith. Both were arrested and charged with the murder of the 3-year-old child and the attempted murders of the other two, and they were both convicted, and they both got life without parole. Story number 5 is one I'm sure many of you have already heard, and that is the one of Byron David Smith. Thanksgiving 2012. 18-year-old Haley Kiefer and 17-year-old Nicholas Brady, the two of them are cousins, they're out causing trouble. They have been known to break into homes and steal things. Naughty, not good. Well, Byron David Smith, his house had been broken into a few times, not necessarily by the two of them, but just had been broken into. And he was fed up with it. And he's an older guy. So he decides, he's going to take matters into his own hands. On Thanksgiving Day 2012, sometime in the morning, Byron would take his truck, drive it away from his house to give the illusion that nobody is home. He then goes down to his basement. He kind of hides in a tucked away corner on a chair. He has a gun with him. He then turns on an audio recorder to record his thoughts. Okay. And then he sits there and waits. He literally waits for someone to break into his home. And he got his wish. You can hear the audio recording, by the way, here on YouTube. It's a very popular story. You can hear glass breaking, then you hear someone entering the house. And then like 10, 12 minutes later, you hear footsteps coming down the stairs of the basement. Then you hear several popping noises, gunfire. 17-year-old Nicholas Brady had been shot 3 times, including once through the head. Byron can be heard on the audio mocking this kid and using derogatory slurs towards him. He then, you can hear him dragging the body a little bit. And then a few minutes later, 18-year-old Haley Kiefer is heard going down the steps, and then you hear her screaming, "Oh my God," and then pop, 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 more gunshots. You hear Haley Kiefer fall to the ground. She isn't dead. You can then discern from the audio that Byron walks right up to her. He then calls her a bunch of slurs and derogatory names, and then he shoots her several more times, including once through the chin up towards her brain. And then he hides their bodies. But eventually, he would be caught very soon afterwards. And he was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. Byron tried to use the castle doctrine, saying he was protecting his home. This was self-defense. Couple problems there. Byron clearly planned for this. He wanted this to happen. He hid his car for the purpose of luring someone into his home to break in. That happened. And then there is no indication that he was in physical danger. But, you know, the castle doctrine, okay, you can shoot 1 time, maybe each person. He shot these people multiple times after they were already down for the count. And he clearly took joy in it. So the jury didn't buy this whole self-defense castle doctrine thing, and he would be convicted of both murders. And the old guy got life without parole. Have fun. Story number 6, Bill Nelson. This is on Thanksgiving Day, 1991, in Costa Mesa, California. Omima Nelson moved to the United States in 1986 and from Egypt. And by 1991, in October, she met an older man. He was like 56, 57 years old. His name was Bill Nelson. I don't know why or how, but they met and then they got married, literally like immediately. And that their marriage only lasted a month. According to Omima, on that Thanksgiving Day, 1991, Bill Nelson had sexually assaulted her. And apparently this, according to her, was a pattern that she had been sexually assaulted numerous times by him over the course of that month that they knew each other. Has this ever been corroborated? No. So I don't know if that part's true. But apparently she had enough. So after the sexual assault on Thanksgiving, she took a pair of scissors and she stabbed it into her husband, Bill. And then she took an iron and she began to beat him until he was dead. And she wasn't done. Omima then dismembered her dear old husband, and she boiled his head. And then she boiled his hands to get his fingerprints removed. She chopped up his body parts and threw them down the garbage disposal with turkey parts to blend them together so no one would know. And then she cut off his private parts. Yeah. And then she said she cooked his ribs in barbecue sauce and she ate them. Omima did have a troublesome youth. She had her private area had been severely mutilated while she lived in Egypt. So the idea of like sexual intercourse to her was very traumatizing. So again, the story of sexual abuse, I don't know if it's true or not. But Jesus, what she did. She was arrested, and she was charged with a bunch of charges for this, and she was sentenced to 27 years to life. It has been 27 years. Yeah, it's been 27 years. But she's still, as far as I can tell, she's still in prison. She has been denied parole, I think, a couple of times so far. Story number 7, Jason Gibson. This was in Thanksgiving 2018 in El Paso, Texas. On Thanksgiving, November 22nd, 2018, and this story actually starts in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Jason Gibson just randomly decides to commit a home invasion. He breaks into a random person's home. It's the home of an 86-year-old man. He proceeds to just beat that man within an inch of his life, but thankfully he would survive. Jason would then force a family member of that man to drive him to El Paso, Texas, which they do. He then chooses a random house again for a home invasion. This is the home of Juan Pablo Salas, his wife Lorenza, and their son Jonathan. Jason breaks in, he has a gun this time, and he just starts to shoot them. He doesn't know them, never met them, walks in and starts shooting them. All three were shot. Lorenza would survive, but unfortunately, Juan and Jonathan would both die from their gunshot wounds. Jason then stole the family car from them, and he tried to flee. He was arrested on November 27th, and then was charged with the murders and other charges like kidnapping, and yeah. He would end up being convicted and sentenced to 3 life terms. And this was, of course, without parole. Why did he do this? He was crazy. Money, drugs, who knows? And finally, story number 8, the story of the ice cream man taking vengeance. This is Thanksgiving 2010 in Ruskin, Florida. A group of men are out sitting on the porch. It's about 8:30 in the morning. The family's inside, just getting started with all the cooking for the big day. Everyone's excited. The men on the porch are just playing a game of cards. When all of a sudden, a dark van pulls up in front of their house. A man walks out who's wearing a shirt that says police, and he's holding like a long gun, rifle of some sort. He then screams at the men to all get down, and they begin to comply, but then he just starts shooting at them. In total, he shot 6 of them. 2 of them were fatally wounded. They were Juan and Sergio Guitron. Later, a man named Michael Keatley fell into police radar. You see, a few months prior to this, Michael Keatley, who drove like an ice cream truck, was out serving, nice cold ice cream bars and everything to kids around the neighborhood. When all of a sudden, he was robbed at gunpoint and he was shot multiple times and obviously survived. The men who did it weren't caught. So police believe he was on some sort of like vigilante high, and he wanted to track down the men who did it himself and take revenge. And police believe that this was a case, again, of mistaken identity. He picked the wrong people. These weren't the guys, as far as they could tell, police. They, looked into all of it. They weren't the guys to do this to him, the ice cream truck. So he would be arrested, Michael Keatley, and Michael Keatley, that's so close to Keaton and Batman, vigilante. Shut up, Mike. But because of a whole bunch of legal issues, this is insane. He's in jail from 2010. His trial doesn't start until 2020. That trial then ends in a mistrial. And then COVID happened, and so that all got his retrial got pushed back. He's been in jail this entire time, We're talking 12, 13 years now almost. And from what I can read, the jury selection for his trial started just like less than a month ago. So his new trial hasn't started yet. So this story still has no conclusion. But that is it for your Thanksgiving tales. If you're watching this with your family, hi family. Hi, are you subscribed to me as well? You probably should. All of my stories are very gloomy, so to brighten up your day. At any rate, that is it. I'm gonna just go now because it's Thanksgiving and we're supposed to eat like food and stuff. Like I need it, right? Triple chin. Yeah. All right. If you want to get merch is in the merch store in the link tree below. You can follow my TikTok if you want to. I have well over 2,000 videos with a lot more short frame videos. Stop it, Mike. Get together. Okay. What? I don't know. Hi. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going. Goodbye, true crimerers. Just whatever. Enjoy your day or don't. Whatever. Don't get killed.